This is my very first Unicorn Hollow Substack Live, so I'm just trying to figure out what's going on, which actually fits super well into the theme that I am speaking on today, which I'll get to in a minute. So, good morning. It's morning here in Tennessee, and thanks for joining me whenever it is that you're here. Here's my beautiful logo by my daughter, Lydia, on a very fancy paper plate. Because, as I'm sure you can tell from the start of this, we are super fancy here. Anyway, at Unicorn Hollow, I am working on sharing my hope-filled stories with little sprinkles of snark and humor in there to everyone who feels like a little bit of a mess, which is obviously me a lot of the time, and to kind of remind us that the small things that we do really matter, because that's really, really hard for me to believe most days. And so I feel like we all just need a little bit of a reminder. And hopefully by sharing, being real, and creating a space where we can show up messy, I'm hoping to build a community where we can show up just as we are, and that's enough. So, as I mentioned, this is my first Substack Live, and I'm really trying to figure out what is going on. And it's a little exciting and mostly terrifying. I also have some notes behind me. So if you see me glancing, it's because I am a notorious verbal meanderer. And I didn't want to end up 20 minutes down the road, lost in the woods with no idea how I was going to get back or what my point was. So hopefully we'll keep it on topic. So in my head, this Substack Live was going to be me walking ethereally through the woods near my home, talking to you calmly about all the wonderful things that are making my life better. So I tried that just using my camera video mode, and I tripped, and I thought that's probably a sign I should just be stationary. Next, I tried sitting out in my backyard to give you a beautiful view of our space around us. You could listen to the birds and occasionally see a little squirrel, but I could not get the Wi-Fi to work out there. So I tried the front deck, which was way too loud. So now we're on site number 4. And much like the rocky start to my first Substack Live, I feel like that's a very fitting way to introduce you to hopefully what the feel and theme of these Substack Live and then Friday Finds posts are going to be, so that you can feel really comfortable showing up wherever you are. So the goal is with these Substack Lives, we'll see how this ends up, but I'm hoping to hop on once a week to just give you a short little thought that will eventually become my Friday Finds post at the end of the week, to share some things that have been really helping me feel like no matter where I'm at, even if it's usually not where I really want to be, that little practices, little things that are giving me hope to that I'm moving towards the goals that I want, and that I can do it in small little ways that are really manageable. So they're going to be focused on writing, but really they're things that honestly have helped me in every area of my life. So I'm hoping that wherever you're at with your journey, whether you're a writer or just a reader, that there'll be things that will be useful for you as well. And at the end, I would love to hear if people try what I've suggested, or if you have tried it. I'd love to hear comments, thoughts, and share back with me what you have discovered. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing for these Friday Finds is every month I have a theme. This month it is, but everything looks dead, because in the Northern Hemisphere in January, most places, everything does look dead. And I think there is, especially with New Year's resolutions and a lot of emphasis on self-improvement, moving forward, which are all really good and important, it can feel like if you're in a space in your life, which feel like I've been in, honestly, for most of my life, where I feel like I'm just like sitting in this space where nothing feels like it's growing. It feels very brown and stationary. And I'm hoping to, with being able to look back on things now, having had a couple of decades of looking at stuff, listening to other people who have been through things, and to kind of share where I'm at now, that I'll be able to maybe give you a little hope and remind myself that I need some hope. That those little things, even in those times of where we feel really stationary and dead, that's doesn't mean things aren't happening. So I'm hoping that these will give us and myself included in this ability to be content where we are, recognizing it's not where we want to be, recognizing that there are things that we want to change, and that will actually give us the courage to be able to move forward with each other. So, and I think the big thing that I'm trying to really remember myself is that we don't always need to be, and really can't always be, visibly growing. I think that's what the message that I often get from our culture is if you're not constantly moving forward and growing, there's something wrong. You're stagnant, you're lazy, you're fill in the blank. But like, if you look around at nature, things that don't have times of dormancy don't thrive. And so I'm trying to remember that myself and use this period of time to think through, like, what are the things that are really feeling dormant right now? And what might that actually mean? That just because it's not visibly growing doesn't mean that there isn't anything happening. So the first thing that I'm going to share that has been really helpful for me in these periods of time where everything looks dead is a practice of intentional interruption. So the intentional part is very important, because if you're anything like me, if you've had small children, if you are in a sort of non-traditional job, if you're working from home, if you have animals, my life is constantly filled with interruption. And that's actually a hindrance a lot of times for me being able to be productive. And so it's not the practice of interruption, but of intentional interruption. And I am focusing on this for myself personally, because I feel like where I'm at in life, I'm constantly on the verge of overwhelm. Like, I'm not overwhelmed, but I'm really on that edge where in any second I could fall over into overwhelm. And when I'm there, because of just things that are going on, personally, the world, life, professionally, I tend to get into spirals in my head where I get stuck doing the same thing. And it's really hard for me to move beyond that. And so one thing that I have to constantly remind myself to do is something I discovered by accident back probably 10 years ago now, or probably more than that, actually. When we were living in Iowa, my husband was in graduate school. I was working at a nonprofit. We had 3 little kids, no time and no money. And in the winter, we would keep our thermostat set really low because we were trying to save money. And my kids would all run around in just their underwear and diapers. So clearly they were not cold, but I was freezing. And being home all the time, I was trying to figure out ways, aside from walking around like a giant marshmallow covered in coats, how can I not feel cold while also not cranking up the temperature in our house? So I discovered if I would take 2 minutes and go outside, walk around the house in the cold without a coat on, it was very cold, but I would come inside and it would feel like a tropical, balmy sauna. And for the next hour and a half, I would feel really, really warm, even though the temperature inside hadn't changed. And one of the things I discovered after doing this was that I would get little snippets of insight when I was outside and then when I would come back in. That often, because I was working on grant writing at that time, I was working on program management and managing our very chaotic children. One of the things that I discovered was that when I had a problem that I kept cycling in, whether it was an actual work problem or whether it was like a relational or child problem, when I took the second to intentionally interrupt what was going on by going outside, trying to make myself very cold so it felt warmer inside, I would have this insight where a lot of times a problem that was there would feel it wouldn't necessarily be a solution, but I would have a different way of looking at it. And so I started trying this in different ways where sometimes my intentional interruption was to, when I was sitting, it was to go up and do something active. Sometimes it was when things were chaotic around me, which was a lot back in those days. I would take 2 minutes, I would set my alarm, and I would go into the bathroom. I would shut and lock the door and take 2 minutes to just sit and think. And so I think the thing that I have taken away from that, and now actually after the last 15 years or so of attempting to, well, it hasn't been that long, 10 years ago is probably what I said, right? Doesn't really matter. But over the last decade or so, as I've tried to really practice, and when I remember to do this, to stop and intentionally interrupt what I'm doing, and now it's almost like my brain knows, oh, this is a time where I can break out of whatever thought pattern that I was in, and I can think through it in a different way. So when I've had trouble with, I'm working on and have been working for a very long time on writing a middle grade manuscript. And I often get stuck and I sit and I write and then I panic about the fact that time is ticking down before I have to go get my kids and I haven't written anything. And then I remember, oh wait, I just need to get up and not be sitting here. So if I get up, I take a walk around the house, I go make myself a cup of tea. Almost always a new thought will come into my mind and a new way of thinking about it. And so I'm hoping that will be helpful for you. It's something that I think everybody can do no matter where they are and how much time they have. You can take 2 to 5 minutes to do something different from what is going on to help break us out of that pattern and cycle of spinning. And that over time, even though it took me a long time for it to feel like it actually regularly made a difference, it now is to the point where I feel like that is so helpful. So I'm hoping that that little tidbit can be helpful for you so that when you're feeling like you're sitting in that space and nothing is happening, it's like going and putting a little bit of, stand up and going and put a little fertilizer. We use compost to work into the soil while the plants are kind of sleeping during the summer. It's not the summer, the winter. And it feels, and it takes a long time for it to feel like it's making a difference. But now that I can look back on it, it really feels like it has. So I'd love to hear from anybody if they've done this, if you feel like there's some other stuff that's been helpful for you, let me know. But thanks for joining me on my inaugural, slightly disastrous, but not too bad, Substack Live. I'm really glad that I did this, and I'm really glad that you're here. Hello. My husband is here, and so is my sister. It's great to see you guys. And yeah, have a wonderful weekend, and I will hopefully see you back here next week with slightly less drama at the beginning. All right, bye.